What's up? Welcome into the CHGO Bears Podcast. Happy Wednesday. My name's Adam Hoge alongside Nicholas Moreano, the new Bears linebacker, according to a lot of people on Twitter. No, that's Nick Morrow. This is Nicholas Moreano.
A little bit of a size difference, I would say.
Speed
athletic
similar?
ability, no.
You don't got the speed?
No,
Okay.
I don't have much of the athletic, ability that Nicholas Morrow has. But yeah, I've gotten like 5 different people. I had to read that twice, Nick. Like, are you tweeting that yourself? I'm like, I'll take the money, but that's about it.
Like, did you get confused for a second? Were you like, whoa, did I just get signed?
Well, I didn't notice it. I guess
Okay.
I just glanced over. I'm like, what do you guys say? I'm like, okay, the letters, they make sense.
You're like, that's not my name. Yeah, welcome in, though. There are some moves to talk about. They're not big moves. The Bears seem to have lost more players at this point than gained. But I think if you actually look at this from Ryan Poles' perspective, I at least understand it. So we are going to get into some of that. But make sure you're chiming in throughout the show. You can follow us on Twitter at CHGO_sports, at CHGO_Bears. I'm at Adam Hoge on Twitter. He's at Nicholas Moreano on Twitter. And you should be checking out Pointsbet as well. The show is presented by Pointsbet. Use that code CHGO to live your bet life. All right, give me your first impressions. They do sign the linebacker, Nick Morrow, and then the guard, Lucas Patrick.
Yeah, so the Morrow signing, again, I just had to really look him up, to be completely honest. A guy that didn't play
happened?
last year. Yeah, didn't play last year because of an ankle injury he sustained in training camp. But when I was watching him, Adam, knowing that he has a safety background, being a safety in college, you can definitely see that on tape in terms of how he moves in space, how he's able to close off just some of those out routes in the flat. He had, in 2020, that was his career high in a bunch of statistical categories in terms of starts, tackles with 77, tackles for loss, sacks, and he was actually in that 2020 season, Adam, he finished first in the NFL among all linebackers with 9 passes defended. So the more I watched him, and it got late last night, so it was like a couple of games, it's like I could see why the Bears made the signing.
Well, I think what's interesting is the speed that he brings to the table, because it's something I know we talked about last week on the show. Is it a foregone conclusion that Roquan Smith is really going to be the will linebacker instead of the Mike? And, I saw our friend Greg Gabriel tweet this out last night after the signing, that Morrow can play both spots, and maybe with that speed, he's actually better suited at the will. I'm very interested to see how that shakes out, because I know when Matt Eberflus made the comment at the Combine, like, he wasn't really willing to commit yet to Roquan Smith being that will linebacker. And I've always sat here thinking, like, to me, he still makes sense as a Mike too. Like, I understand his skill set translates to that weak side linebacker spot, but at the same time, I always picture Roquan as that quarterback of the defense right now. Granted, he'll be learning a new defense himself and going through all that, but I don't know what's going to happen. I found the signing interesting as opposed to like Anthony Walker, who, by the way, re-signed with the Browns. That's a name that's come up because he's more of that prototypical, probably Mike linebacker in this defense, and instead they went a slightly different route.
And look, Matt Eberflus, Ryan Poles, they talked about, the body types in terms of the players that they're going to bring here. You look at Morrow, he does seem like he would fit more of that will, and maybe with Roquan Smith, it's not, like you said, a foregone conclusion. I think I was a little early on that, direction that he would just play the will and no questions asked. But this sign does indicate maybe there can be, a fluctuation as to how they want to approach that. But, yeah, it just seems like Roquan Smith being the leader of this defense now that Khalil Mack is gone, and most likely Akeem Hicks, when it gets announced there, he'll be gone. Like, this is Roquan's defense, and just him being that middle linebacker, I think, would just make the most sense.
All right, I want to talk about Lucas Patrick, though. I like this signing. And at first, when the name came across, like familiar with him. Obviously, he's been with the Packers for a while, so most of those guys here in Chicago we're used to seeing, even on the offensive line. But I have to admit, I didn't realize that he started as many games. Like, I know he's been filling in and been a star, but he's really become a full-time starter the last 2 seasons. And that coincides with that Packer offensive line getting pretty good too, which was more of an issue, I think, in the late Mike McCarthy years. Since Matt LaFleur's taken over, that offensive line's gotten pretty good. And here's a guy that instantly, you can kind of judge how good a player might be based on the Twitter reaction from the fan base. Like, you got to be a little bit careful about it. And I know we're going to probably get to this in our next segment. Like, I think there's some overrating of some of the Bears players on Twitter that they've lost. But right away, like the reaction from Packers and I'm talking about like reporters I respect and trust their opinions. We're like, this is a loss for Green Bay. And, of course, the Bears have Luke Getsy as their offensive coordinator, came over from Green Bay, so he knows Lucas Patrick well. I think the only question here is, does he play center or guard? But at first I was like, okay, this seems like a depth move. And then within 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, no, they signed him to be a starter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just kind of gauging, again, more so what the Packers coaching staff thought of him. Heading into that Week 17 matchup last season against the Minnesota Vikings, Matt LaFleur had some pretty, high remarks for Lucas Patrick. He said he was asked about the steadiness of the interior of the offensive line, and Matt LaFleur said Lucas is kind of the glue guy. He holds that whole group together. He brings that grit, that toughness, the way he competes, the way he cares about his teammates, and he's been doing it for a whole time here since we've been together, especially the last 2 years. So I think Lucas is playing at a really high level, and we're really fortunate that we have a lot of great people in that room. So you hear what, obviously the head coach is saying for a guy that's had to step in, and he had 822 snaps at center last season. So like you were saying, Adam, a guy that has played, a good amount of games there in Green Bay and has started, but seeing the head coach, what he had to say about him, we've heard Aaron Rodgers has talked about him in the past. So Lucas Patrick, and then also when you add in the Packers Twitter, because I always feel like it's the other way around where Bears Twitter's either, complaining about somebody being, lost, but it's nice to kind of almost see the opposite end there.
Yeah, by the way, the chat is definitely A+ signing for Lucas Patrick.
Sweet.
He's a center we've been craving. A lot of people are excited about the signing.
Yeah, and I think that part of that's probably just whenever you sign somebody from Green Bay, right? It's like you're pulling somebody away. You get excited about it. No, but when you look at some of the stuff you just talked about, what Aaron Rodgers had to say about this guy, having sort of that mean streak. We'll have Olin Kreutz back in here tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to getting his take on Lucas Patrick. I'm sure he'll take some time to watch some film on him. And heck, he seems to know every offensive lineman there is in the league anyway. So,
True.
I'm sure he has some good opinions on him, and I'm looking forward to hearing those.
Adam, I just read the lower third here. Now I actually thought that was my name, to be completely fair. Like, I read that, I'm like, wait, no, we're not. Okay, so I could see why people got confused last night. That was weird.
Yeah. See, even he's getting confused. He's now a Bears linebacker. That's all right.
You're going to have to put on a little weight, just a little.
Height, weight, speed, strength, all the physical attributes.
So what's interesting, though, is, I think the Bears, the big splash is still Larry Ogunjobi.
Oh, yeah.
But, they're sort of still following. Everyone got, I think, a little, maybe they were a little surprised when Ogunjobi got signed so quickly after the free agency window opened. Because Ryan Poles made it perfectly clear, he wasn't really going to live in that top-tier free agent range. And I think what's important is even Ogunjobi was not a crazy contract. It was a reasonable one. It just happened to unfold pretty quick, and they got their 3 technique right away. These other moves are definitely sort of that second wave of free agency, although technically none of this really is official till 3 o'clock today.
True.
And it could get wild at 3, depending on what happens with Deshaun Watson. But, I'm okay with how this is unfolded. I know fans are getting a little anxious, and, I got to give a shout out to my guy, David Kaplan. He's already predicting on the radio as I'm driving down here today that the Bears are going to be in last place in the NFC North.
I heard that this morning.
Love you, Cap, but I'm not making predictions about the standings. Not even 48 hours. We are now 48 hours into free agency. Like, let's wait till the dust settles
Simmer
here
down a little.
And I'll repeat what I said yesterday. Okay, I'll look right into the camera and say this. If you are predicting the Bears to be god awful in the fall, this coming fall, then you are not on the Justin Fields bandwagon. That means you do not believe in the quarterback, because if he gets better, I just find it hard to believe that the Bears are going to be any worse than the 6 wins that they had in 2021. I'm not saying they're going to be a great team. I'm just saying whatever they're losing on defense, whatever they need to kind of retool on offense, if the quarterback makes the jump, and that's still the plan here, right? That's why Luke Getsy's here, all the development, like it still should happen. And I have questions about who the hell he's going to throw the ball to, definitely.
Of course.
But let's let the dust settle on that a little bit here, at least until after the draft. If Justin Fields makes the leap, I'll be surprised if they're in last place in the NFC North.
Same here. And look, as long as there's no games like Cleveland last season with this new Bears offense, and again, we don't know who Justin Fields is going to be throwing to, but I just don't think they're going to go that unprepared in terms of how they want to approach attacking a defense and what the defense is going to bring at them. So I agree with you there, Adam. And for me last night, I was kind of looking at, okay, when Ryan Pace first got his GM job in 2015, how they kind of approached free agency. They signed Pernell McPhee to their, that big contract, that, a similar age and what they did with Ogunjobi here. But then the next 2 days, what they did in terms of signing free agents, they signed Antron Roll and then Eddie Royal to 3-year deals. And that's not this Bears regime. They're not going out and, again, putting these 3-year contracts to guys that, ultimately didn't work out for the Bears.
There were a lot of bad.
There were a lot of bad, and that was the start of it in 2015. So having a little bit of patience and seeing what Ryan Poles is, again, assessing the market, I think that's good for the longevity of the Chicago Bears, because we kind of seen it go the other way, where these moves haven't panned out, and then the Bears are in a worse spot because of them. So yeah, I was kind of looking into that just to see the comparisons, contrasts of the two GMs in their first years. But like you, I do like what the Bears are doing, and maybe, come 3 o'clock or later this afternoon, there will be some moves.
I was just going to say, let's handle that super chat, because I saw it come in. And he says, this is from Mitchell. To your point, Adam, have people looked at the 2022 opponents? The schedule is much softer than last year, and if the offense improves to average, it's looking up. By the way, I also don't want to say I'm jumping on the bandwagon. If the Bears' offense even just improves to average, that's a significant leap. And to me, a realistic goal would be to get in the teens, just ranking wise on offense.
Yeah,
and even late teens. If you can get to number 18, number 19. You're jumping up.
Yeah.
You're jumping up a third in the league alone there. But I do think that with Luke Getsy, with the quarterback, that should be the goal, right? To make that type of jump to average, as you put it there. And
you know what I'm looking at? Just to kind of going back to that super chat, the opponents.
Yeah.
Atlanta Falcons. You have them on the road. We don't know what's going on in Atlanta. If they get Deshaun Watson, that looks a lot different, right? But you have the Atlanta Falcons on the road. Buffalo Bills, you play at home. That's obviously going to be a very tough matchup. Dallas Cowboys on the road.
It's a tough game.
Yep. Detroit Lions, obviously, home and away. Green Bay Packers, Vikings. Houston Texans at home. And again, that team, Lovie Smith reunion, right? So that'll be an interesting game in itself. So you also have the Miami Dolphins.
I mean, look, 2 of your road games are to New York against not great teams. So that's to the point. Yes, and there's tough games. I don't expect the Bears to beat the Patriots on the road. I don't expect them to beat the Cowboys on the road. I don't expect them to beat the Bills at home. But you do have Washington at home is definitely a winnable game. And I'm just looking at games outside the division, right? We could ignore the NFC North at this point. But Washington at home, Miami at home,
San Francisco at home. So that's going to be a tough one too. But, when I saw the schedule and saw that both the New York games were in New York, I remember the guys in the press box were saying the only place worse in terms of food in the press box was at New York. I'm like, damn, and we got to go there twice. So it's like, because I'm curious just to see all these different stadiums and how it kind of looks in there, and even the press box and the food. But I'm like, oh, that was a little discouraging.
Your mind's just like mine. I go straight to the food. That's like number one.
It's hard to do worse than Soldier Field.
It
10
is.
times a year. Just it's raw. And you know what the worst part is? Some of the food on the concourse is actually really good.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's a John Greenberg move, to give a shout out to him from The Athletic. He'll just go to the concourse and say this, screw the press box food. I'm gonna just go pay $20 for a hot dog, and it's pretty good.
It's worth it.
And by the way, if you are watching on YouTube, yes, I know the bottom of my shoes are kind of dirty, but that is the Chicago Stars.
Oh, look at that.
These were special NBA. Nike came out with these at the All-Star game. I don't know. How do I?
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
when the NBA All-Star game was here a couple years ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Those are cool.
So they were my basketball shoes, but then because of the pandemic, I had to retire from basketball, and now I wear them to work.
That's unfortunate, Adam, because Kyle and I were talking yesterday. We're like, man, it would be awesome if we get a couple runs in, just a couple games in, and we're like, I know Adam plays.
Well, look, my retirement's a little bit, longer than Tom Brady's, but I can be convinced to come back for a game or two, for
Kyle,
sure.
we may have a game in the future.
I'm a chucker. I mean, I haven't played in multiple years, but
Let's see
I'm
all
more
the
that
people
Costanza style at this point in my career.
Okay.
Get CHGO basketball team. I'm so down for it.
All right. No, the scouting report there. Don't pass to Lawrence.
I'll pass too.
Just throw the guy in pickup. He just every time you pass it to him, he just throws it up.
The one-hander. We used to have somebody.
I have some skills. I played.
Okay.
It's been a while, and I'm just thinking my game is probably not as good as it should be at this point.
Yeah.
We can all probably say that, honestly.
That's all right. All right. We needed to talk about some of the losses that the Bears have had. So I'm gonna, let's talk about our friends at Pointsbet here for a second, and then I wanna see if I can calm the fears a little bit of some Bears fans as we look at some of the players that the Bears have lost at this point and who they've moved on to. But if you're enjoying what we are doing here at CHGO, and we love all the support that you guys have shown us so far, but the best way to support CHGO right now is to download the PointsBet app. Use code CHGO when you sign up, and if you do that right now, you'll get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. But that's not it. If you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you'll receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content, and you'll even get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker. So that's $2,000 in free bets, a free CHGO membership, which is worth it on its own, and a free t-shirt from the CHGO locker, all for making a $50 first-time deposit at PointsBet. And if you have any questions about any of this, you can email pointsbet@allchgo.com. We'll help you out. By the way, I should also point out, because I got the email too. I believe if you purchase a CHGO membership before you went in and did PointsBet, they're willing to refund you the membership cost to still get it.
Look at
through PointsBet, because I did see that email go out. So again, if you have any questions about any of that, go to pointsbet@allchgo.com. We're taking care of you, I promise. So PointsBet is your home for live in-play betting, and it just got better because now they have live college basketball same-game parlay. Pretty good week for that. For the first time ever, you can build the perfect live same-game parlay only with PointsBet. You can combine your favorite bets anytime during the game. If you want more, you can also boost your live same-game parlays. Watch live, parlay live, boost live, all with PointsBet. And now online sign-up is available in Illinois. You can download the PointsBet app right now. Register your account from start to finish, all from your phone. Plus, during PointsBet Match Madness, all users can earn up to $100 in free bets during each round. Just place a $50 pregame wager and get a free $20 live bet to be used for that round. So what are you waiting for? Once the game starts, don't just bet, live your bet life with PointsBet. Gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700.
You can use that PointsBet and just gambling to bet on the Iowa Hawkeyes. I think that'd be a good wager there, right, Adam? I know how you feel, but I won't even let you comment on that because I have to tell you about CHGO.
Seems like a terrible bet.
If you aren't a member of our CHGO family, what are you waiting for? Members will have access to our premium content from all of our great writers. You also get a free t-shirt, like Adam was talking about, of your choice when you become a member, and you get access to the members-only Discord. the CHGO Lounge. And, of course, we have podcasts and live shows like this one on every team, every day. We just had the Chicago Sky debut a couple days ago, so go check that out. And, again, come join this amazing family here at CHGO that is constantly growing. And check us out on all of our social media platforms, CHGO, where you get everything Chicago sports.
All right, let's take a look at some of the sort of the scoreboard, if you will, of what the Bears have done so far. And this isn't even comprehensive because this is just what's official. And honestly, none of this is official even until 3 o'clock today, but at least the players that we know have moved on based on reports to other teams and things like that. So obviously you have your rivals, the players we've talked about, Larry Ogunjobi as the 3 technique, Lucas Patrick sliding in on the interior of that offensive line, Nick Morrow, linebacker, presumably, sometimes I want to point something out too, like sometimes the guys that you think are coming in to be starters in March don't even make the team by September. Like, I'm not saying that's necessarily the case with any of these guys, but just don't overreact. Like, I remember when they went and got Artie Burns.
Yeah, that was, you're thinking that former first-round draft pick, he's going to get a new shot here in Chicago.
But obviously Patrick and Morrow are players who, legit play.
Exactly, yeah.
And so they had, certainly, as you look at the roster today, you think that they're sliding in their starters. Darrington Evans is a former third-round pick.
He might fall into that category, to be completely honest. Adam.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Look, the Bears claimed him off waivers. Was a third-round pick, but he's been hurt. First 2 seasons, he's struggled to get on the field. So, depth guy at best, I think. There.
I'm just trying to fill out the board for you. It looked a little lopsided on the departure side.
No, it's okay. I mean, it still illustrates the point that I think a lot of Bears fans are getting upset about right now, which is you look at the names on the right under departures, and those are all players, especially in Khalil Mack's case, but all the way down the board that have been solid players and certainly had their moments as, James Daniels as a second-year player, he's definitely the future. Like, he's going to be somebody who gets an extension. Bilal Nichols, last summer we all thought he would get an extension and surprisingly didn't. But then he had a down year. Eddie Goldman, we talked about this yesterday. That's a big name to lose. Eddie Goldman hasn't been Eddie Goldman since 2019, though. Nope. So the point here, and the reason why I wanted to put this up, is because of those names on that board, only Khalil Mack, for me, as I graded out the film throughout the season last year, still played as a long-term starter. And the reason why I used that phrase in my grading scale is because I have starters and I have long-term starters. And there's a difference in that the guys that come into the long-term starter category are the ones that you want to re-sign and not let out of your building. So Khalil Mack was the only one of those guys that fit that for me last season, and he missed 10 games.
Yeah.
Right? And so you can still understand in his case why Ryan Poles did what he did. All these other guys, I think you're overpaying to bring them back on when you look at the money that they've gotten from other teams. Even I would actually argue Jakeem Grant would be besides Khalil Mack, the next biggest loss on that list. He got paid pretty well by the Browns. But even in his case, I think, probably find a replacement. They might already have that guy with Khalil Herbert if they like him as a returner. Yeah. So it might not be the end of the world.
Yeah, with those guys, it's like how many of them actually move the needle in terms of the guys that left outside of a Khalil Mack that makes your team in 2022, I don't want to say substantially better, but just a better team overall. To your point, Adam, it's like Khalil Mack is the clear-cut favorite for the guy that can do that when healthy. But outside of that, you definitely have some uncertainty because those guys have just been inconsistent at best, especially last season. So that's the big thing. I will ask you this, Adam. Are the Bears at this point better or worse than what they were? Now after a couple of signings.
Well, I think, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. I don't know that they're much worse.
Yeah.
I do not know that they're much worse because, again, even in the case of Khalil Mack, yes, you hear that, you go, they lost Khalil Mack. They must be. But he didn't play the whole second half of the season. So I'm looking at the team that they had towards the end of the season. Are they worse? I can't make a strong argument that they're worse, especially if you are going to sit, and I talked about this in the first segment, and say, Justin Fields is definitely going to be better. Well, then as a whole, the team should be slightly better. I think. Like, I don't know. And by the way, I should point out, because I know some of our commenters have already thrown it in there, Akeem Hicks' name. The reason he wasn't on that board is because he hasn't signed anywhere else yet. It's not fit. Same thing with Allen Robinson, not on that board yet because he hasn't agreed to terms with another team. But even in Akeem Hicks' case, now Hicks would also be in that same category as Khalil Mack, as guys who were still playing at that long-term starter level in terms of his actual play on the field. But in his case, he missed 8 games last season. You go back to really the 2 seasons prior to that too, he just couldn't stay on the field. And at his age, 32, you can still understand why they're moving on from him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely in the chat, again, comment on what you think. Are the Bears better? Are they worse? Or how much worse are they with those departures? We definitely want to hear from you. Kind of also just looking at like the departures and their arrivals here, Adam, is there, looking at what they've added, is there something that you want to see happen? Like, even if it's a position, like I think wide receiver is obviously like the one that a lot of people will talk about. Like, when are they going to add somebody there? But look, the Bears are slow playing this, checking out the market, seeing what they can do, what they can sign people for. But if it was me, it's like I do want to see him linked to some kind of wide receiver.
Yeah, well, they got to do something at wide receiver for sure. I mean, and that's the one spot, as I just said everything I said. Like, if Allen Robinson already agreed to another team, I'd say they are worse at wide receiver right now. Like, there's no question, and that's concerning. They have to do something there. But again, we're 48 hours into this thing. Everything's official at 3 o'clock. You're going to see more trades go down. That might not necessarily involve the Bears, but things are going to happen. Things are going to pick up. They're not going to go into the season with this wide receiver group right now. But to answer your question, I'm not going to harp on Jarvis Landry again because I think we've covered that enough the last couple of days. People can go back and check out those podcasts. But I would like to see a couple veterans like that thrown in the mix on affordable deals that can mix in with this younger roster. In the case of Jarvis Landry, he'd certainly be helping out Justin Fields. I want to give you a name on defense, though.
Okay.
And again, I don't expect this to happen, but I would, if I was in charge, I would do it. Honey Badger. Okay. They need a safety. Like, right now, they do not have a safety to pair with Eddie Jackson. And I would go after Tyrann Mathieu in a heartbeat. I've always loved his game. He's moving on because the Chiefs have already signed his replacement. And I would. That's a guy who I would plug into the defense right away. An opportunistic player who fits the Eberflus model of taking the ball away. So that's somebody I would sign right away.
Culture guy too. I think he again provides that veteran stability that, when you look at the defense as a whole, there's not a lot of that at this point. So that would be an interesting signing because they do need to bring another safety at this point. Another guy that we have mentioned, like I would, for a similar kind of reasoning, but playing that outside corner with an Xavier Rhodes, being somebody that does provide that veteran kind of presence opposite of a Jalen Johnson. And, again, they do need to add just people at that position as well to play, opposite of an ascending player like Johnson. So that was another guy that I was kind of thinking of. We said Rasul Douglas as maybe like a 1-year contract, taking a chance on a guy like that. But, yeah, adding to the secondary. But, again, going to the defensive side of the ball, I think that too, when people were seeing some of these moves being made, you obviously Ogunjobi, you have Morrow, and then two defensive guys. And again, still very early with all the holes that are still in the offense.
Yeah, and Chris there points out on YouTube that there's a Poles connection there with Tyrann Mathieu because he would be coming over from the Chiefs. That works both ways, by the way.
Yeah, very true.
For all we know, Poles might not have a high opinion. I would think he would, but he may not. Sometimes that's the case too. He's like, yeah, no, I'm good because he obviously has more information on the situation than we do, and that's why he's the general manager and we are not. Although Nick, you are playing linebacker this year,
apparently.
So we'll kind of update that list that we just put up for you as the moves continue to come in. I'm sure it'll look different by tomorrow. It'd be nice if they would, stop agreeing to deals at like 11 o'clock at night.
That'd be great.
But some deals are better than no deals, and I'm sure I expect this thing to pick up 3:00 today.
Yeah, same here. I think that's and hope. Yeah, anytime sooner than 11 at night would be great. Something that we didn't kind of talk about here, Adam, that I do want to get your thoughts on with Lucas Patrick, and maybe maybe it was in the chat too. It's like, is he a center or guard? Like obviously he has that position versatility, playing both in Green Bay. But given what the Bears currently have, and you mentioned Larry Borom, what if the Bears see him as potentially a guard in this this offensive line group? If you were to, again, putting on your GM hat, is Patrick a center in your eyes, or is he a guard? And once we get Olin on tomorrow, that's going to provide some really great insight as well. But if we had to just kind of go at it right now.
Well, and the other possibility is, do they view Jenkins as a guard?
So put that into the mix as well.
I mean, to me, those are the two wild cards in all of this. Is even though Ryan Poles did not draft Larry Borom or Tevin Jenkins, they're still so young. I think showed enough. Jenkins' case, very small sample size, and you got to be a little bit concerned about the back going forward. But they're both there's enough promise there with both players to me that I just would be surprised if the Bears if they're not in the plans to open up the first practice of training camp as part of the starting five. The question is where, right? The question is where on that starting five on the offensive line. And that's where I'm struggling with the idea of moving Larry Borom to guard, because I liked what he did at right tackle. Like, I even liked what he did at left tackle for a little bit, which was a small sample size. And so I can see why people project him as a guard, but I'm like, whoa, wait a minute here. Like, let's not give up on him as a tackle. What if it's actually Jenkins who could end up being the better person to shift inside the guard? But regardless, I guess I'd be surprised if those two are your two tackles, which means one of them would be moving to guard, and Lucas Patrick would be your center. Like, this is kind of like the puzzle you got to figure out in your brain. But that's why my guess is that Lucas Patrick is at least coming in to kind of push Sam Mustipher at center. The great thing about that signing, though, is he has the versatility to go back and forth, maybe more so than I know Cody Whitehair did a lot. But I think everybody's at the point where it's like, all right, Cody Whitehair's just keep him at guard.
This chat, the position versatility. This is what Jimmy K says. The position versatility is the most BS concept I've heard. I just need a player to be good at one position. I want your take on this because, it's almost like if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks kind of thing. Where like, shouldn't you want guys to focus? It's a totally different position. I don't think people realize that. Like, between playing center, playing guard, and playing tackle, like, there's a lot of intricacies that like normal fans don't realize. Like, is it a good thing to have versatility on the line?
Well, it's definitely a good thing to have. I mean, I understand where the comment's coming from, though, Jimmy, because like I think the problem becomes if you're constantly switching between the two, then
you end up like the Bears have been with James Daniels, Cody Whitehair, cycling of just positions. I'll say this: the two things I don't want to see, that being one of them, is just let's say you move in one of the tackles to guard, and then the next offseason, oh wait, let's try him back at tackle. Like, if you're gonna make a move, do so with it being maybe a long-term, as long as like injuries don't play an impact there, to where these guys can grow into those positions, because you didn't see that with Cody Whitehair or James Daniels, where it was just a constant revolving door. Oh, we're gonna go this off season. Even Kyle Long had to start at, was it tackle like the week before the see, it's like that.
They just
that's
switched
been a
him to right
constant.
tackle. Like they signed Josh Sitton, and then we're like, okay, now you're the right tackle.
See,
Kyle,
you can't be doing that. And then the other thing, it's, you want your best five out there, and you don't want to just have Sam Mustipher as a center, because Lucas Patrick can play guard. If Lucas Patrick is a better center than what Sam Mustipher is, and I think that's the case, you put him at center, and then you still figure out the rest as you kind of see what players that you have available. So those are like the two things that I don't want the Bears to kind of make that mistake of, just, again, revolving people and then switching maybe a season later, and then whatever your best five is out there, and if Lucas Patrick is the best center or a better center than he is a guard, you play him there despite what you may have or may not have in Sam Mustipher.
Yeah, and so I think, like, in conclusion, I don't think position versatility is BS because it's extremely important, especially the backup center is an extremely important spot because you always have to have a backup center active on game day at any given moment. Because if your center goes down, you have to have somebody else who can snap the ball. And that's why versatility is key, because if that guy can also play guard, play multiple positions, then that's helping you keep an extra guy on special teams active on game day, things like that. But I do agree that ideally, they're good at one spot. Oh, by the way, they can also play another spot in a pinch. But yes, you want them to be, we know this guy's the starting center. And if there's constant back and forth there, then it probably goes back to that idea of if you have two quarterbacks, you don't really have one because you can never really lock in on a guy at one spot. That's what you don't want.
No, that's not what you don't want. And before we continue this conversation, just have to tell you a little bit more about our sponsorship with Pointsbet. If you enjoy CHGO, one way to help us to continue to grow is to download the Pointsbet app and use code CHGO when you sign up. Not only are you going to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000, but if you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you'll receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content, and you'll even get a free t-shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker. If you have any questions, email pointsbet at allchgo.com, and we'll help you out. And in case you missed it, online sign-up is available in Illinois. You'll be signing up with the fastest sportsbook, easier than ever, so you can start living your bet life in seconds. So what are you waiting for? Once the game starts, don't just bet. Live your bet life with PointsBet. Gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700.
And if you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast, you've probably already figured out that the live shows every day on every team are completely free to you. You can follow along right here, watch live. We appreciate those of you that do and interact with the show. Listen to the podcast later on your way home from work. Whenever you listen to them, those are free to you every day. But if you want more content, our premium written content is available for members at allchgo.com. You can get merchandise. The shirts are sweet. I can't wait to get mine to start rocking these on the show. And you do get a free shirt when you become a member. There's also members-only Discord in the CHGO Lounge. So make sure you're getting those memberships, supporting us at allchgo.com. All right, keeping the show rolling here for another, what do we got here? Another 20 minutes or so.
20 minutes.
As we continue to, I guess, look at what Ryan Poles has done, and it's such a small sample size. I know fans get anxious, and that's all part of the fun of this week, but, I really don't think anyone should be surprised.
No, just because of what he stated out in his introductory press conference, even at the Combine, that second, third wave, and he's pretty much staying true to that. And, again, it hasn't even officially started. It'll start later this afternoon, so yeah, I think you just see, I think what it is, Adam, is like you see every other team, it feels like in the NFL, oh, they're associated with this player, they're signing this player for this amount of years, this amount of money, and then you're just the Bears, and you're just kind of waiting, okay, when are we going to do something like that, other than Larry Ogunjobi? So I think that's where it comes from, Adam. It's like, oh, these players are improving their rosters, trying to do something for the 2022 season, and then the Bears are, again, kind of wait and see approach, and like I said, I think that's fine with the current state of this team, all the holes that they have to fill. They have to be strategic in what they can do. You can't just go out and throw money like the Jaguars have been doing. They have the cap space and the luxury to do so. So when you're the Bears situation, again, you have to be a little bit more, like I said, strategic in what moves you make, who you pursue. Should you go get that veteran that maybe has some wear and tear in them, or do you go that younger round, a younger player that may be unproven? So it is all about patience, but again, I think there should be some moves later on today or in the coming days.
Guys, Corey gave us a super chat here, and he added this question: what about Jabril Peppers at safety? Coming off injury, he'd be a guy I'd target for a short-term prove-it deal. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't hate it. I mean, I think the good thing about that second safety spot is, we've seen the Bears constantly be able to fill that without too much of a problem, right?
Yeah.
And Tashawn Gibson's a guy that when did he re-signed last year really late. Like
it was really, yeah.
Like, was that May already? Like, it was.
I think it was somewhere around there.
It was after the draft, which is a good segue to what I was just about to talk about here. Because, first of all, just in the last hour, we're seeing more names from cap casualties pop up on the market. The Commanders, you may have heard of them. Great team, the Commanders. Yeah. They are releasing Eric Flowers.
Interesting.
On their offensive line. So that's a name to keep in mind. The Raiders releasing Carl Nassib today. He's a 4-3 defensive end type. So, and you got to start thinking about it in that sense. Like the Bears going out, potentially signing cheap valued, prototypical 4-3 end in this new defense that they have. There's every year you see moves after the draft.
Mm-hmm.
When did the Bears release Charles Leno last year? After they drafted Tevin Jenkins. So this all doesn't need to be figured out today, this week, over the next couple weeks. There's going to continue to be moves here over the next, heck, they traded for Khalil Mack 5 days before the season started. Exactly, that's the best example of altering your roster.
Last minute things happening.
So this thing's going to continue for 7 months from the start of the season.
Yeah, so
there's time here, guys.
Plenty of time, and it's if you are the first to pounce in free agency, you miss out on maybe some of these moves that happen later on, where you're maybe not expecting a player to be released, but it happens. And then you already signed somebody to a luxury deal. It's like, oh, could we have gotten maybe similar production out of whatever position you're trying to fill there. So, again, there are names that are popping up. The Bears may do their homework on them. They may not. But they didn't go out and do something initially, and that gives them the option to do so now, which I think in this current state that the Bears are in, you have to weigh all of your options.
Couple more super chats to get to. Tom, who's been flying in here with these on the show so far. We appreciate you, Tom. How do you guys feel about Armstead or Eric Fisher being signed by the Bears? I think Armstead would be a huge prize. Love the idea. Think that especially when you factor in the amount of cap space the Bears have next year. If you can lock down your left tackle right now for Justin Fields in 2022. Because remember, you can manipulate these contracts in a way where it doesn't really hurt you this year. Load it to next year, when you're going to have more space. That's a move I would definitely make. Eric Fisher, to me,
I feel like he's on the downward trend, if anything. Well, not in the same, I guess, category as a Toronto Armstead.
To me, he's kind of in the same sort of stratosphere as Charles Leno.
Yeah.
And that he's a starting caliber left tackle. You could certainly do a lot worse. If you want to do better, you're going to have to pay a lot more. Unless you hit on your left tackle in the draft, which we don't know if the Bears have at this point, right? With Tevin Jenkins.
Yeah.
So Fisher, to me, it depends on the money, but I would wait a little bit before I sort of settle. I think you'd be settling on Fisher. Armstead would be the guy you're going out and grabbing.
That would make a lot of Bears fans very happy seeing that name, that player associated with their team, especially because there's still so much good football left in him, and coming from obviously the Saints and being that he was able to hunker down that side. Yeah, the Bears would definitely take a player like that. Adam, so I have an article that's being waited. We're waiting to see when we're going to publish it about the Chiefs drafts and their draft history and kind of when Ryan Poles was there since 2009. Obviously, we talked about the Bears not addressing wide receiver yet. The Chiefs, since Ryan Poles has been there, they haven't drafted a lot of wide receivers early in the draft, second and third round. Since 2009, they've drafted 3 in second and third round. But given the current state of this team, and we'll see if any more moves are made, would that be maybe a trend that you think gets broken? Where
they go after one in the second round, and
second or third round, they've only drafted 3 since 2009 in those 2 rounds.
And we just had a super chat up there, I think, about drafting Christian Watson, the wide receiver out of North Dakota State, and
that's perfectly.
I think he definitely falls in that range of one of those 2 second-round picks that the Bears have. I like Christian Watson, 6'4",
4.4 speeds.
Yeah,
Fast.
ran a 4.36 vertical jump, 38.5. He's definitely, with that size, with that speed, somebody who has helped himself a lot in the pre-draft process, in my opinion. I think when you turn on the tape, he definitely has some things that need to be cleaned up a little bit. But, his father played in the NFL. He's got good lineage there. I like Christian Watson a lot. So that's somebody I would consider. I'm a little – I don't want to – it's hard to put too much on what the Chiefs did on Ryan Poles because he was the one that calling the shots. And a lot of guys
especially early on, he wasn't
put in so much work on so many players that never played for the team you work for. That really, I still think we need a couple years of sample size of what Ryan Poles actually does in charge before we can really.
That was his pick,
But to me, it's a position in need, and until they start signing guys or filling in the giant holes on the depth chart right now at wide receiver, yes, they could be drafting wide receivers in the second round, and I would honestly hope that they would be.
Yeah, just because again, you need playmakers for Justin Fields. They don't really have that as of right now. You do still need to see what you have in a Cole Kmet, which is a guy that I feel like so far this offseason hasn't been talked about very much, which is, again, it's the off season. We're in March right now, and there's still plenty to be done. But I still think that you definitely want to just get as much there as possible, and you're not going to be able to do that in one off season. That's the thing too. It's like we have all these holes that the Bears need to fill. Yeah, and you have 6 draft picks now with the Khalil Mack trade, but you still can't realistically fill those positions with these absolute best playmakers. It's like you have to be strategic in how you kind of address each one of those holes, and then you can kind of go again. Maybe that's a 2023 offseason where you can maybe address a position a little bit more, just better in terms of the production of a player. So a lot of holes to fill. You would obviously love more draft capital other than the 6, but yeah, they just have to really value what position they can put right now that'll help Justin Fields, just for this 2022 season.
And by the way, with Christian Watson, I can't speak into. We're still too far out from the draft for me to go in depth on too many of these prospects. But he's one guy that I'm not afraid to because I have looked into him a lot. First of all, if you're not paying attention to North Dakota State, you should be.
You should be.
not only are they just become a powerhouse FCS program, but they are putting dudes into the league every year now, on a regular basis. And if you're a player who feels a high school player that feels disrespected that you're not getting FBS offers, that's the place to go if North Dakota State is willing to take you, because it's become such a good program to the point that I am regularly turning on their games when I can during the season when they're on TV. And so a guy like Christian Watson, the knock on him is there's a little Allen Robinson in his game in that probably more of a long speed type guy. Now he's probably a little faster overall, I'd say, when you consider he ran a 4.36, but there's not a ton of short area quickness. So on short intermediate type routes, corners are probably going to be able to stick with him. And you might have some separation issues. I think that's because otherwise you see 6'4", that speed, you're like, this guy must be a first round pick.
Yeah.
So there's got to be something there, but character seems to be good. I always say these guys are so young. They're going to grow. They're going to develop. And that's another part of this. I hope the Bears can figure out they got to develop some of these guys better.
And that's going to be key. Yeah.
I know people are like, why did James Daniels, he's still got upside. He's still so young, but he's been here for 4 years and hasn't taken off. And I think not all of that's his fault. You also look at the organization, and you're like, when this guy was showing so much promise in year 2, why didn't it go to the next level? And I would argue, actually, I thought he was playing his best early part of year 3 before he got hurt. I'm like, this guy's finally starting to take off, and then it didn't happen. Blame the injury, blame the lack of development, whatever. The Bears in general, whatever position we're talking about, need to be better at developing these guys.
Yeah, and that's going to be the big thing with this new regime coming in. It's how can they take already the players that are on this roster, but again, take them to that next level. Specifically, I look at Justin Fields being that guy that needs to obviously take that next step with Luke Getsy, who, like I've said before, he's going to be doing a lot more, I think, just coaching in terms of what he had to do in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers and what he has to do with Justin Fields. But that's going to be so big if this new era of Bears football is going to have any success. Can they take the players that they're going to draft, the players that are currently on the roster, the players that they're going to still acquire in free agency, and ultimately make them better than where they maybe were previously? And if they can, maybe finally see them turn that corner and become eventually competitive in the NFC North. And that would be huge for what this organization really wants to do. But again, we're not going to know this right now in March. It's impossible to know that. So once we can finally go to practices and see games, then we'll kind of get an indication of where that's going.
Let's take one more question. Then there's a couple actual notes from around the league I want to hit before we get out of here. But here's one last one. Real question. What would be more important for Fields next year, more protection or more weapons? You can't have Mooney to be wide receiver 1, but you can't have him always sacked either. What's the solution? Well, why not address both?
That's going to be the best way.
Other than the salary cap, there's no reason why you can't address both. And I think, and I understand it, like that's probably where most of the angst from Bears fans is coming from right now, that they just haven't done enough on offense early on in this thing. Everybody wants to see a wide receiver signed. And really, everyone just wants to see Justin Fields put in better position to have success. And so he needs better protection. I think Lucas Patrick will help that. But you still want to see more than just that. And who the heck is he throwing the football to?
Yeah, no, it's like a 1A, 1B, and that's how it should be, because those are so vital for any success Justin Fields is going to have. Like, you can't prioritize one over the other, in my opinion. Yes, you can get a pass catcher, but will he have time? And then you could, again, reverse that. So it really is a 1A, 1B kind of situation in terms of trying to get the most out of Justin Fields.
We had this debate last week, though, and I ultimately did go with the offensive line because I just you really do need to address both, but offensive line impacts the health of your quarterback more. Now he could sit back there in the pocket and not be touched and have nobody to throw the ball to, and that still doesn't help the offense. But at least you're not getting Justin Fields hurt if you can protect him.
Very true. Very true. So the Bears do that, then maybe Justin Fields won't be one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the league going into 2022.
Yeah, and that needs to improve. All right, couple things. First of all, by far the biggest signing that has happened in the NFL is ESPN signing Joe Buck.
Oh, my gosh.
And Troy Aikman, which is now official, went official while I know that it was pretty much in the works last Friday. But they're talking about Troy Aikman making $18 million a year. This tweet just came across from Front Office Sports. Troy Aikman will now make more annually than 97% of active NFL players. And he's making a hell of a lot more than he ever made in the league back in the 90s as a starting quarterback. So good for Troy Aikman cashing in. Joe Buck makes the move over there too. And for the first time in a long time, Monday Night Football really has a good team.
Yeah, they do. It's been so long since, I don't know, maybe I've been excited to listen to the broadcast for a Monday Night Football game, but that definitely brings the excitement. Is this a better job than being a backup quarterback in terms of money? Now, we talked about Chase Daniel just ringing in the cash, but now you see what they're making. That's definitely up there, I would think.
Yeah, but yeah.
It's a lot of work. Obviously, a lot of work. Both are obviously a lot of work, but backup quarterback or...
I'd still say the backup quarterback's doing more work throughout the week.
Yeah, and also the backup quarterback might actually have to get hit.
He might actually have to play.
So. Might have to. Yeah. But yes, that's this is a big move, and I care about the stuff in the media, but this is like Pat Summerall, John Madden moving networks. I'm not.
Okay.
Let me be clear. Yeah. I'm not saying Joe Buck and Troy. Pat Summerall and John Madden are the GOATs. But in terms of having a top team move from one network to the other, that's the biggest move since Summerall and Madden were doing this. And I would argue that this is the best team that they've had on Monday Night Football since Al Michaels was paired with John Madden.
Oh, man.
which was right at the end of John Madden's broadcasting career.
No love for Dennis Miller.
No love for Dennis Miller. at all.
Chop, babe.
I was watching I think, was it Greg Olson's Instagram story yesterday, or maybe it was Jay Cutler's, but they were talking about possibly uniting and being in a broadcast booth, because I know Jay Cutler's been trying to do that for seems like forever now.
Well, he had the gig, and then he gave it up to go play for the Dolphins. That didn't go well, and then he lost the gig with Fox. So, yeah, there has been some rumblings that Jay Cutler could get back in the booth. And I've always said I think he'd be good at it.
I think that would be entertaining. I mean, just him pairing up with Greg Olson, too. I don't know how that would work out, but I think it would be entertaining.
The other thing I wanted to address is some of the rule changes that have been proposed. Now, the stuff will all get taken care of at the owners' meetings here in a couple of weeks. Sometimes they get tabled to May. The biggest of which is the overtime rules, which seems to actually have a lot of momentum. So a couple teams have brought to the table the one that everybody seems to like, which is, it's not the first time it's been proposed, by the way, but it seems like this might be the first time they actually make a change potentially. But the idea that both teams will get a possession in overtime, regardless of you score a touchdown, don't score a touchdown, the game would not be over. And this would fix what happened in the Chiefs.
I didn't want that game to ever end. Just how I was going, like a lot of people, right? They were just going back and forth. But yeah, I'm all for it, because when you have two high caliber quarterbacks like that going at it, keep it going.
Now, the other one that the Titans brought to the table has to do with overtime is if you score a touchdown but then go for two and convert the two-pointer, then the game would be over. See, but to me, though, that still doesn't solve the problem of Josh Allen didn't get the ball in overtime.
He wouldn't get the opportunity again. Yeah.
So I guess I don't really understand the point of that.
Yeah. I think we could do a whole podcast on fixing overtime, because there's so many ways to do it. I mean, there's a ton. Josh Allen had to get the ball.
He had to get the ball. I wonder in the chat, like, does that solve it? The 2-point, like, if you get it and then the game's over.
Well, one thing I've ranted about for years is coming down to a coin is the dumbest thing ever. Like, why are we leaving this up to a coin? That makes zero. There's no logic in a coin. It's just something that's been a thing forever, and so we keep doing it. All the other sports have built-in home field advantages for rules. Okay, hockey, line change, last change, when your stick goes down on the face-offs, those are built-in rules for the home team that give the home team a slight advantage. In baseball, the home team bats last. It's a built-in. So to me, there's no reason why the home team at the start of every game doesn't always just get the choice of kicking, receiving, deferring, whatever they want. And then the same thing should apply in overtime. Regardless of what you do with how the game ends, it's coming down to a coin makes no sense to me.
Well, I'll take that even a step further, Adam. I mean, how these teams get first downs. Again, this old traditional, bring out the chains, all this technology that's around. It's like
we have lasers now.
Yeah, it's like, did the ball cross the line of scrimmage? Oh, let's bring out this, the chain gang to really see
like
it.
a 65-year-old guy with a big gun is like running like, oh yeah, I've got the spot. Sure you do.
Sure you do. So it's like there's things that could be changed for sure.
And then the one I want to bring up that does have a little bit of a connection to the Bears before we got out of here. The Eagles were among a few teams that proposed a change that doesn't really affect the play so much as they want to restrict secondary front office members from getting poached to other teams until after the draft. So it would basically allow teams to deny interviews, similar to what they can do with assistant coaches, until after the draft. And then there would be a period after the draft where all those assistant GMs, director of college scouting, whatever, can interview for other jobs that are not. So these are non-GM jobs. The example being, and it's not surprising the Eagles are the team proposing this, they lost Ian Cunningham to the Bears. So Ian Cunningham got hired by Ryan Poles to be his assistant GM, and basically the Eagles, among other teams, are trying to block those types of moves from happening until after the draft, which I understand because the draft season in the front office runs on a different calendar than the rest of the
yeah.
NFL, and especially when it comes to scouts, their contracts, directors of college scouting, their contracts, they all run through the draft, and then that's when they reset. So it is a different calendar, and I can see where they're coming from on that.
Adam, I thought you were going to say that you can't win off a double doink when you said like the Eagles, and it didn't go that direction. But I could see why the Eagles would want that rule change.
Yeah. I do. I said this when Cody Parkey hit the upright 4 times in a game. Like, you should get points for that. That's way harder than making a field goal.
Oh, easily.
To hit the upright 4 times in one game.
Yeah, but you got to call it to the ref before you kick it. So I'm going to aim for that and just give me 4.
I'm going to hit that pole.
Still ridiculous. All right, we got to get out of here. Thanks, everybody, for watching today. So many people watching. We appreciate it. It's awesome to see. And remember, if you are listening to this as a podcast later, we are live every day on YouTube at 11 a.m. And for those of you watching on YouTube, if you happen to miss it one day, you can listen to it as a podcast. We appreciate it. However you consume the show, we appreciate it. Make sure you're checking out CHGO_sports, allchgo.com to become a member. And as I say every day, tell a friend. Just one thing. Send off a text today. Tell somebody about us and join in. We appreciate all the support. For Nicholas Moreano, I'm Adam Hoge. We'll be back tomorrow with Olin Kreutz.